Hello everyone, please listen to this intro before you get started. It will help you in the long run, I promise. My intro tools you will need part of this video does not include what you will need to add the fringe. There's two different ways to add fringe. You can either add it the way I added it, or you can buy fringe that would be sewn into a garment. Regardless, all of the tools and supplies for fringe, and then the sequins, the yarn, all of that is linked in the description below. If you are a beginner, please go to my channel. I have two videos that accompany this video. For practice, one being super basic, how to hold a crochet hook, how to chain, the very basics of crochet, and then the other one is a more repetitive, slowed down version of the Solomon's knot, which is the basis of this pattern. With that being said, the Solomon's knot is also referred to as the lover's knot. So throughout the crochet tutorial, you'll hear me interchange those two things. Solomon's knot, lover's knot, they mean the exact same thing. So don't get confused there. And if you have any questions or you need help or anything's hard to follow, please just comment down below and I'll get back to you. I want as many people crocheting that can crochet, so I'm here to help. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm excited to see what you guys come up with. So the way this pattern works is we will create two panels and we will crochet them together and then add the fringe. This is one of the two panels I've already created, and I will give you a list of materials you'll need for the second panel. Both panels are the exact same. So the first thing you're going to need is a lot of stitch markers. You can use either these little plastic ones from Amazon, or you can use bobby pins or safety pins. You're going to need thin yarn. I'll link down below the Etsy shop that I use. I like that this one is like shiny. The important thing here is this is 3.5 millimeter yarn. And then I sized down. This is a 3 millimeter crochet hook, and then a small pair of scissors, and then some sequins. You want to make sure to get the sequins that have a big hole opening. You just want to make sure that you can pop this through and pull a yarn through it. So I've just gotten my yarn prepared and I have my crochet hook, and I'm going to go ahead and put two fingers out, bring the yarn towards me, lay it over the two fingers, pull up and over to make an X, and then I'm going to create a slip knot. Okay, now I'm going to chain 100. 99, 100. Okay. So you should have a long line. I want you to put this across your chest and make sure it goes from maybe like halfway down your shoulder, across your chest to halfway down your shoulder. Okay, now that you have chained 100, you are going to do a row of half double crochets. So to do that, I am going to chain one, and then I'm going to yarn over and half double crochet into the first, the 100th stitch of my chain. Pull through, yarn over, pull through all three. I'll do that again, obviously. Put a stitch marker on there. You're going to yarn over, go through your chain, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through all three. Yarn over into your chain, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through all three. Should look something like this. And do that all the way down. Okay, so I've just finished stitching this last row. I will show you guys how to turn it. So basically we're going to chain one and we're going to half double crochet all the way back down before we start our Solomon's knot. So we're going to yarn over and pull through, chain one, turn around, then I'm going to yarn over, go through the last stitch of your previous row. This will now be stitch one. Should be 3 loops, yarn over, pull all the way through, and add a stitch marker. One more time, yarn over, go through your chain. There should be 2, and then you're going to yarn over, pull through there's 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3. And we're going to do that all the way down to the end. You should still have 100 stitches. When you get to your end, just make sure you're going in that very last stitch, and then move your stitch marker up to that last stitch you just created to the loose end so you can take this out. Now that you have your base done, this is when stitch markers are going to be your best friend. So I want you to get a good amount of these, and I want you to count every 10. So basically, when you do a Solomon knot, you have to keep a lot of tension on your line. So these stitch markers are just to make it easier so you don't have to count while you have your hands busy. So I will now show you the Solomon's knot. Keep these close by and also get your sequins out. So take this loose end stitch marker off and get your hook back in there. We're going to turn our project. Well, actually, we are going to chain one and then turn our project. Now, we're going to single crochet in the very first stitch here. So go through your stitch, yarn over, pull through, 2 loops, yarn over, pull through both of them, add a stitch marker. And now comes the fun part. So what you're gonna do is go up about this much. The way I measure it is it's about from like your fingernail to the mid part of your second finger joint. So about from here to here is what we're measuring. Tip of your nail to about the middle right here. So I'll show you again. We're just going to pull that up, like that, yarn over, pull through, and then you're gonna have a little crisscrossy like this. Then you're gonna go through that loop, grab your yarn for 2 loops, yarn over and pull through those 2. Confusing? Yes. So I'm going to show you again. You're going to pull to about the same amount, pinch this stitch you just made, yarn over and pull through. Then you're going to go back through that loop, grab your yarn, pull it through. You now have 2 loops on your hook, and you're going to yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. Okay. You should have something that looks like this. You're going to attach this to your stitch marker. I will show you how. You are just going to go through this stitch, yarn over, pull through as if you're doing a single crochet. You should have 2 loops here. You are just going to place your sequin on here, yarn over, pull through your sequin, and then both of those loops, and there you go. Okay, I know it's confusing. You're going to pull up to about that knuckle joint length, yarn over, pull through, and then this loop that's hooking, you want to go back behind this string that has the tension on it. So you're going to go in, yarn over, bring it back up. You should have 2 loops, yarn over, pull through both. So I'm going to pinch this knot, I'm going to pull it up, yarn over, pull through. Underneath, grab that and pull through. Yarn through, over, pull through both of these. Okay. Now, we again have a knot, another knot we're going to connect to here. So again, you are just going to stick your hook through this stitch, yarn over, pull through for a single crochet. Before you finish your single crochet, you're going to put your sequin on, yarn over, pull through the sequin, and both loops. Okay, it can be confusing, so I'm going to do it slowly again, and then I'll finish the row. So basically, you're going to yarn up about this length, yarn over, pull through, under that taut yarn, over, pull through. You now have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through both of those. Then you're going to pinch that. You're going to pinch that stitch you just made. You're going to pull up to about the same height. It's about good. Yarn over, pull through. I'm going to go back in there. Grab your yarn, bring it back up. You should have 2 loops there. You're going to yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. There we go. And now we're going to single crochet into the next stitch marker. You're going to poke through like a single crochet, yarn over, pull through. Add your sequin. Yarn over, pull through your sequin. Sorry. should look a little something like this. It's very important to keep all of these about the same length. It's okay if you mess up a little. This one's a little too short, but that's all right. Then just continue along the rest of the row. And then for this last one, I'm going to keep off a sequin just so it's easier to join. Okay, and then you're going to add a stitch marker to your loose end and I will explain the next process. So you want to keep stitch markers at the end because this is going to help us count how many rows until we start the diagonal. So these knots can be confusing, but we are now going to do the same process, but we're going to connect them into here, into these floating knots that we made. It can be confusing when you hook them in, just deciding where to put your crochet hook. If you can see here, you just want to make sure you grab two, and they're the ones that are like facing you. If you lay it flat, it doesn't matter that much, but it can get confusing. I tried to show you with a stitch marker. Just make sure it's like the stitch that you created and it's not just like a floating string. Okay, so what we're gonna do basically now is we're gonna do this row 5 times before we start decreasing. This is officially the second row of the Solens knot. So I'm going to take the stitch marker out and put our crochet hook back in. Okay, so something a little bit different about the edges is we have to create 2 knots before hooking the third knot back into here to ensure it goes down straight. So what I mean by that is I'm going to pull, yarn over, pull through, do a single crochet, one more time, pull up, yarn over, pull through, loop back. We're going to do that a third time, and over, pull through, so you should have 1, 2, 3, and this third is going to single crochet back into here. Okay, and then flip your work over. Grab a sequin, put it on your hook, and then just single crochet into the loose knot of your previous row. Get rid of this one. So I know it looks confusing, but basically the reason you have to do 2 at the ends is so that it creates like an edge here. We want to stitch that this is row 2. We're going to continue down to the other side. So again, yarn up, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, through, through, and then we're going to connect these. Now that we're into the normal section, you want to connect, you have your sequin, your knot, and your second knot, you're going to connect it to this free knot from the previous row, the sequin on. And you just single crochet. Into this section. So we have finished the second row, and we are now going to hook this back into the end of the first row. It can be a little confusing, so I'll show you. You're going to kind of continue doing what you've been doing before. So make one Solomon's knot. One more Solomon's knot. You should now have something that looks like this as the completion of your second row. So we are now going to do a similar thing that we did on this side. We're going to create 3 knots. We are going to hook it right back in to the last knot of the previous row. So we hooked into the end here. We created one Solomon's knot, 2 Solomon's knot, 3 Solomon's knot, and we're going to hook it in to that last free knot that we just created after we flip it over. Add your sequin. Okay, you're at the end of your third row. You are going to want to hook in then you're going to Solomon's knot, Solomon's knot, we're going to do a similar thing. So you're going to do 2 Solomon's knots, and you're going to hook in to this end of the single crochet of the previous row. Oopsies. I'm going to add a sequin on this one. Now onto our fourth row, we are going to do the same thing. You're going to pull up, Solomon's knot, 1, 2, and then for the edges we do 3 of them. So you're going to go 3. You should have something that looks like this at the end. 1 Solomon knot, 2 Solomon knot, 3 Solomon knot. You're going to hook back in to the previous single crochet of the last row. Again, after you turn it over. I am going to continue that until I get to 5 rows, and I will meet you guys to a good starting place after that. Okay, I'm back. I've completed my 5th row. The reason I know that is because, again, I just count the sequins, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I also keep count in my head, but the next piece of this that's going to be very important to finishing this panel are the stitch markers. I want you guys to make sure you have a stitch marker at the beginning, like we have had since we started, at the end of that 5th row, and this is just important so that when you're combining both panels, you know where to connect them so it won't like look wonky. And basically from here on out, we are going to continue the same pattern, and we are going to miss the last stitch all the way down until we get to a point. And at the end of each row, we are going to use a stitch marker. I'm going to put this stitch marker back in. Doesn't have to be in a perfect spot, just so you know where that 5th row is. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to create 3 of these at the end. So the difference with starting here for these decreases is we're only going to do 2 at the edges. And this is because you're not connecting into that edge when you come back around, and you want it to create like a triangle shape. Okay, and I'm just going to show you where we're going to connect when we come back around so that you understand. So this is the beginning of the 6th row, right? And we are going to come back, and instead of this very edge knot, we're going to come back into this knot, one in from the edge. So I am going to put 2 stitch markers. I'm going to put a stitch marker here. So I know this is the beginning of the 6th row. I'm going to put a stitch marker here so that I know this will be the last stitch I single crochet into before starting at that point, the 8th row. I'm also going to come over here I didn't do the same thing on this side, but that's all right. So I have this as the beginning of the 5th row, and I'm going to just put a stitch marker on one stitch in so that I know to stop here before I turn it around for that 7th row. But again, right now I'm on the 6th, and I'm just going to go ahead and finish the 6th row. Okay, and again, instead of doing 3 love knots, we're only going to do 2 of them. For the ends, 1, 2, and then 1, 2, go ahead and flip your work over delicately. Okay, and again, I highly encourage, once you've done a couple, to go ahead and stitch marker that crochet that starts the next row and then 1 knot in so that you know where to stop on the way back. Then as you can see, we're going to this one here. Okay, I'm about to connect to my last stitch of this row. Add the sequin. Make 2 Solomon knots. 1, 2. Sometimes I like to put a stitch marker so I can turn it. And then turn your work. Okay, you've made your 2 Solomon knots. You have your stitch marker on this side. I'm gonna undo this. And I'm going to continue adding sequins and my Solomon knots. And once I do a few stitches, I will add that stitch marker for the next row. Come on. Okay, so I'm almost to the end. And I just wanted to show you guys kind of how it's coming along. I'm going to finish this up. So as you can see, I only have 2 knots I'm going to connect into. So this is basically my last row. But I'll show you what this is going to look like. So I'm going to add my edge stitch marker here before I start this row, which is basically just 2 stitches. Okay, so basically I'm going to flip this over and I'm going to connect into this very last stitch to create a point. Let me just flip this over. One more Solomon's knot. Then I'm going to add my very last sequin. Then I will cut and fasten off. I'm still going to add a stitch marker here, just to know it's technically the turn of that very last row. And then boom, you have created a panel. So the next step we are going to do to make it more seamless. So as you can see, when you pull these out, it almost creates like points. And I want to connect these together just so that when we hang all of that fringe, it hangs in an even line. So I'm going to do that on one of the panels and then I'll come back and show you how to do it. Okay, so we're back and I'm gonna show you guys before we go ahead and get started on the second panel, just what I did here. So as you can see, I've kind of like connected all of the stitch markers with like one long Solomon knot. It'll probably be easiest if you guys do this like on a flat surface, because if you're laying on the couch or watching TV, you don't want to like make them too close together or too far apart, or else the whole panel will like sit wonky on your body. You want it to be like as flat as possible when you connect them. And I'm going to remove these inner stitch markers. Basically the stitch markers without like sequins on them. So I've removed all the stitch markers that were connected to a sequin. So now I only have these edge stitch markers. And one confusing thing I want to mention is this side has 2 stitch markers. This yellow one being the end of our 5 rows and this purple one being the end of our 5 rows. We are going to start our edge at one below this 5, but on this side we're going to start at the 5th row. Okay, so you're going to start your yarn like normal. Fasten her on there. And then I want to make sure you guys can see it well. So this side has both stitch markers. So on this side I'm going to start with this pink one, leaving that yellow one on there, and I'm just going to single crochet this to start. Okay. And then I'm going to pull this loose end and create a love knot that is just the length between these 2 stitch markers. Sorry, there's a lot of like yarn in the way. So if you can see, you want to pull it out enough to be the length between these 2 stitch markers. And then you are going to go ahead and do what we've always done, which is create that lover's knot. And then we're going to connect it into this single crochet. without a sequin. Okay, it's kind of hard to tell, but I will do it again for this next stitch marker. So I basically just guesstimate about the length between them. I need it longer. Check. Needs to be a little bit longer. That's good. I'm going to create my Solomon's knot. And then I'm going to crochet it into this next stitch marker. Then I'm going to continue that all the way to the end to create a nice edge. So for the last one, I'm just going to go into this last sequin single crochet. And then we are going to cut and fasten off. And on the side, we're just going to start at that 5th single crochet that marks the 5th row. Okay, so I'm at the end again. And this time, instead of going to a sequin, I'm going to go to this last stitch marker. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to hang a lot of fringe on here, so it's okay if it's not perfect, but just try and get it as best you can into that single crochet. And then I'm going to fasten off again. And voila! You have your almost finished panel. Okay, it looks a little chunky at the end. We're going to fix that. And here you go. It's going to be fun. Okay, I am going to show you how I strung the fringe. So basically, I flip a chair over. I have a tiny chair that I use for like a tiny pot for plants. But I'm going to use it as an example for you. So I just take a dining room chair and I flip it upside down like this. And then I will take, I have extra yarn here. I'll take a piece of tape and I'll tape it to the legs. And then I will just unwind a whole ball of yarn around the legs of a chair. You can do this while you watch TV. And then the hard part, or not the hard part, but the delicate part, is that when you finish your ball of yarn, so this is your chair, you're going to want to find something to pinch as close as you can to both sides of the legs. I used like those little twisty metal things that you get on like bread bags. And then you're essentially going to cut in the center and make sure they're tied so that the yarn doesn't go anywhere. And then you're going to have like two, I'll go get them to show you. Okay, you will end up with something like this. Obviously, the longer the better. And then you can always cut it. And also, I would start with one ball of yarn, and then after you add the fringe, if you need more, add more after that. Obviously, because you can't do much with a bunch of short pieces of yarn. So that is my method of creating fringe. And then I will move the camera and show you how I put the fringe on. Okay, so as you can see, I have one of the panels on like two hanging pant hangers, and I have it just draped back against a door. And then I didn't mention this at the beginning of the video, but I attached the fringe with like hair extension clips. So this is my little station, hair extension clips, one of these, and then I just have been stringing 3 at a time and then looping them around and then pressing them flat with this little tool. And yeah, this is how it's looking. That is when these are important, these stitch markers. So basically I started with the fringe like one below, like one opening below this stitch marker. Basically, I'm finished with this side. When I do the other panel, I will attach both panels together, starting with the stitch markers up and then along my shoulder, which I'll show you guys how to do. But once I attach them, I will finish the fringe to make it like a cohesive thing. If you don't want to use hair extension, like hair extension clips, you can also just buy fringe that's like made to be sewn and like attach it along the edge that way. This does take a long time, but this string is so like fine that if you just tie it, it like has a tendency to like undo and come apart. So yeah, this is my solution. And then I'm going to steam these, cut them nice, and I will show you guys how to attach both panels once I finish the fringe on the other side. Okay, so I have finished adding the fringe on both the front and back panels, and then I have lied them on top of each other and added stitch markers where I'm going to combine them. If you remember, you should have a stitch marker up at the top and then at the bottom where that 5th row was. And I used that 5th row stitch marker to like align both the front and back panels. And then I used the stitch markers to just kind of go through like the knots. And that's how I'm going to combine the Solomon knot section together. And I literally just take like a piece of string and just like tie the Solomon knots together with just like a standard double, triple knot. And then when I come up here, I made sure that I put it on, and I put it where I had the stitch markers go up to about right at the top of my shoulders. And then I will just add a row of single crochets to crochet the top together. It can get pretty heavy with the fringe, so you just want to make sure that everything is nice and sturdy and not going to slip off of you or come undone. And then I will steam the fringe, and I will cut it to make it nice and clean. And I will show you guys what it looks like completely finished. And there you have it. I'm obsessed with this. I think it's so fun for summer to throw on, like I have with a pair of jeans or over at the beach. I've been thinking of making like a matching skirt, maybe for like a festival vibes. If that's something you guys would be interested in, comment down below. Super down for that. And thank you so much for watching. Go do a good deed, say something nice to somebody you love, and just spread positivity. Thank you so much.